First of all, we're going to start with the easy ones, and that is the rectangle and the ellipse tools. They work very similarly, so we're just going to deal with them together. First of all, I'm going to click on the rectangle tool here. Here we have a crosshair, and to the lower right hand corner you can see a little rectangle. I simply press down and drag like that and release, and there we have a rectangle. Ellipse works the same way. I'll click on the tool and you can see that the icon has changed. We still have the crosshairs, but we have an ellipse tool. Press and drag like that and release, and there we have the ellipse. I'm just going to come up to the pick tool, double click on it, and that selects everything on the page, and delete them. Now we'll look at some of the modifying keys. First of all, we'll start with the rectangle tool, and here we'll hold down the control key, and what we'll do is constrain it to a perfect square. Press and drag like this, and it's important to release the mouse before I release the control key. If we go up to the control palette, you can see the size is exactly the same on the vertical and horizontal axis. Let's come over here and select the ellipse tool like this, and hold down the control key. Start dragging like this, and there we end up with a perfect circle. Again, releasing the mouse before the control key, and if we go over to our vertical and horizontals here, we can see that they're exactly the same. Again, I'll double click on the pick tool, selects everything, and I'll delete them. Now, let me just go back here. I held down the control key and dragged it like this to get the perfect square. In most programs in the Windows platform, you will find that the shift key actually does that. So if you're much more familiar with that, there's a way of changing it. So we go to the tools, go to options, and we'll go to toolbox and the pick tool here, and here you can see the control and shift keys. Control for constraint, shift from transform from the center. Down here is the Windows standard. So if you're more familiar and more comfortable with it, Corel's easy to switch. I'm just going to leave it traditional Corel Draw. But if you don't like it, it bothers you, really simple to change. I'm going to cancel out. I'll select this and delete it. This time we're going to use the other modifying key, and that's the shift key. Let me start with a rectangle. If I press and drag, you can see that it anchors at the starting point where I started. So if I move back here, you can see that it's always anchored where I start drawing like that. If I start drawing over here, it anchors to that point, and when I release it. The shift key constrains that and changes it so that it anchors to the center. If I hold down the shift key and drag out like that, you can see it's creating the rectangle from the center. Release, again, release the mouse before the constraining key. Works exactly the same with the ellipse tool. Hold down the shift key, and if I want to draw a circle from the center of the page, simply drag out like that. Let me double click on the pick tool and delete everything just to get some of this off the screen. And let's go back to our ellipse tool. And this time I'm going to use both constraining keys, the shift and the control. So that way I'll draw the object from the center. That's the shift key that constrains that. And the control key makes sure that I have a perfect circle. There we have the perfect circle. You can see it like that. And I sized it from the center. And of course, it works exactly the same with the rectangle tool. I create a perfect square like that. Let me select everything and delete it. We have on the flyouts for the rectangle tool another object here, 3-point rectangle tool. Come over here. We have the 3-point ellipse tool. Again, they work the same way, so let me just start with a rectangle tool. And if you want to use this, you click on a spot and drag. Here you can see you get a straight line. However, when I release the mouse, it anchors to the point where I stopped, and you can draw a rectangle like that. Let me just delete it, click, and drag. I can hold down the control key to constrain it to a straight line, and then when I release, I'm not pressing down a mouse button at the moment. It keeps the line that I drew straight, and then when I come down and click away, I create the rectangle. Now, one of the advantages of this method is that you can create a rectangle at an angle. Notice that when I come over and create a rectangle like this, it's always vertically or horizontally square. However, using the 3-point rectangle tool, I can click and drag at any angle I want, release, and that way I can create a rectangle at an angle like this. Notice it gives me the angle up here. I can come in and type 0 and reset it. I'll delete that, come down here and choose the 3-point ellipse tool, press and drag, release, and then I can just move it like that to create the shape. Again, the advantage is that you can create it at an angle like this that you couldn't do in using the simple tool. It's not something that I have used a lot. It's been in Corel since version 11, and other than this tutorials, quite honestly, I haven't used it. But again, there's so many features here, and what people do depends on their application. And some people could well use this every day, where others will never use it.